chapter 13, and we've been talking about the false prophet, or the second beast, the beast from the earth, as he is described here in chapter 13. We're going to be looking at verses 15 through 18 tonight, but let's read verse 14, just to grab some context here. So verse 14, again, speaking of the false prophet, it says, "And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live." And we pick it up here tonight, verse 15. "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save that he have the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." And then verse 18, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, or, as we all know, 666. All right, so before we get to the mark, which is, we'll get there. Before we get to the mark, let's reference this image here, as it's talked about here in verse number 15. And so John tells us something here at the beginning of verse 15 that is rather curious. He says that he had power to give life unto this particular image. Now, that being said, we don't know what this image is. All we know is that it's an image. That's really all the facts that we get about this. And so we don't know what this image is, but it says that here the false prophet has the power to give this particular image life. Now, the word translated life here means really spirit. That most of the time that it's used in the New Testament, hundreds of times, it's used to refer to the Holy Spirit. However, that same word can also refer to the spirit of a person, kind of meaning their emotions, their desires, their disposition. Furthermore, it can refer to the movement of air. Either it can refer to the wind or a person's breath. Now, taking all that together, I don't believe that we should understand this text here, verse number 15. I don't believe that we should understand this to mean that this image, whatever it is, it's not human, but whatever it is, that which was lifeless was now made alive. I don't believe that the false prophet has the ability to take something that is not even human and give it actual life. Now, I kind of equate this to what we talked about back in verse number 3. In verse number 3 it says, "And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." And so the false prophet, we understand this, he gets his power from the dragon, and the Bible does not ascribe to Satan any life-giving power. Right? We understand this. Nowhere in the Bible do we see that Satan has the power to give life. And so we see from the book of Genesis very early on, that God breathes into Adam, into his nostrils, the breath of life. We see that this is a God-given power, that God does this. And so this is why, and I talked about this back in verse number 3, but this is why I believe that the Antichrist does actually fake his death, that he doesn't actually die. It could be that he does actually receive a wound that in a lot of cases would be mortal. But I don't believe that he actually dies, but then the false prophet comes in and he makes the world believe through deception that it talks about here in verse number 14, that he uses deception to make the world believe that he died. And he's going to do the same thing here, that he's going to use deception to make the world believe that whatever this particular image is has life. And then you think about it from this perspective, with the advancements being made in both robotics and artificial intelligence, this is not really a greatly difficult thing to do. In fact, you can look this up, and it's to be honest with you, it's terrifying. They have these things out there called deep fakes. Deep fakes. And what you can do with a deep fake is you can take anybody's face, you can put them on any body, on any video, and you can manipulate their mouth, and you can make them say whatever you want. You can literally place any person anywhere and make them do anything you want, and you cannot tell a discernible difference when watching this video. Law enforcement officials are very leery of this kind of technology because you can understand the implications of this. You could implicate anybody to do really anything if you know how to use it. And so with the advancements being made in all of this technology to make some kind of an image, whether that be an actual, just a statue or whatever the case may be, or whether that be some form of robotic with artificial intelligence, whatever the case may be, it's not going to be difficult for the false prophet to make people believe that this thing is alive, that this thing has life. And so whatever it is, again, we're not told. We're just said that's all we get. And so whatever it is, the false prophet, again, is going to use his ability to deceive, and he's going to make the world believe that this thing is alive. Now, the important part of this verse isn't what exactly this image will look like. That's not the important thing. The important thing is what happens to those who refuse to worship it. That's the important thing here in verse number 15. Again, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. That's the important thing. Again, we've talked about this. There's kind of a line drawn in the sand. You worship this beast, and as we'll see in a second, you take this mark or you die. If you are caught, you don't have a third option. It's this, that, or death. I'm going to read for you. You don't have to turn there if you don't want, but in Psalm chapter 115, this is kind of a common thing throughout the Bible. And Psalm 115 says this, Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto thy name give glory, for thy mercy and for thy truth's sake. Wherefore should the heathen say, Where is now their God? But our God is in the heavens. He hath done whatsoever he hath pleased. And then verse 4 it says, Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. It says this, They have mouths, but they speak not. The eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. Feet they have, but they walk not. Neither speak they through their throat. They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusteth in them. And essentially the point of that is, it was pretty obvious to people when an idol was made, because an idol was always something made by hands. It was very obvious. This is not a God. Right? This is something that somebody made, whether it's a carving, whether it's an engraving, whether it's some kind of clay, whatever the case may be. Somebody's hands made this. Well, this particular idol is going to look a lot different. This particular idol, from what we see, is going to sound a lot different. People are going to fall into this trap. People are going to believe that this thing has some kind of power. And so the idols that people have worshipped in the past, they have obviously been idols. In other words, it was clearly something made by human hands. This is not going to be the case with this image. It will look as it has real power, and the false prophet will be deceiving people to believe it is real. And here's the thing about it. Many are going to fall down and worship. Many people are going to fall into this trap. In fact, most people are going to fall down and worship this particular image. However, some won't. We know this. Some won't. And those that are caught will pay with their lives. And I say it like that specifically because I do believe that there's going to be a remnant of people who are not going to get caught, that are going to survive, that are going to use other means of survival beyond whatever the economic system will be that we'll talk about just here in a second. But I do believe that there are going to be people survive this particular time, but not if you're caught. If you're caught, unless you find some way to escape, it will be like it was in the Roman time. You pay your offering to Caesar, you bow down and you worship him, or you die. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. You worship the image and you take the mark. So that leads us right into verse 16. Verse 16 says, And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark. Nobody's getting out of this. It doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter the status you have. If you are alive at that time, you have a decision to make. Again, if you're in that system and if you're caught, you take the mark or you die. Now, given the fact that this is still having to do with the false prophet, and he, that word he there, that's in reference to the false prophet. Given the fact that this is who we're still talking about, we can make a correlation between this mark and the worship of the beast, or the worship of the image. Essentially what I'm saying is they're correlated. There's a direct link between worship of this image and taking the mark. In other words, if you take the mark, that means you worship the image. That's what that means. They're not separate. You can't say, I don't want to worship the image, but I would still like to take the mark. That won't be an option. If you take the mark, you are worshiping the image. There's a direct link between the two. And so this mark is instituted as nothing more than another example of Satan trying to counterfeit God. We've talked about this a couple of times already in our study of Revelation, but we've already seen back in chapter 7 that God is going to place a mark on the foreheads of the 144,000 Jews. We talked about this. I know it's been a long time ago. But back in chapter 7, God calls out 12,000 from each tribe. He places a mark upon them, upon their foreheads. And we've seen that they're going to receive protection and all kinds of things because of this mark. But God does this back in chapter 7, and now the devil is using his own mark And, of course, we understand that it's also on the forehead with the option of it being on the right hand as well. But, again, this is just him trying to counterfeit. We've already talked about last week how he has tried to counterfeit at this point the Trinity, where he has the dragon, he has the beast, he has the false prophet. He tries to have his own Trinity to counterfeit that which God does. And so we read John Phillips here. John Phillips, he says, in the days of the Roman Empire, a citizen had to offer a pinch of incense on a pagan altar as a token of his loyalty to the Caesar cult. That was all. This is how they say it. It was just a pinch of salt. We're not asking for a huge offering. It's just a pinch of salt. All you got to do is just offer your pinch of salt, call Caesar God, and you're fine. It's not a big deal. That's all we're asking. It's just a pinch of salt. He goes on to say, Christians refused to do it, and they perished by the thousands for their loyalty to Christ. In a coming day, the last of the Caesars will make a like demand. He will require a simple mark stamped on the forehead or hand as a token of allegiance. And so, as they said 2,000 years ago, it's just a little bit of salt. I don't understand why you Christians are making such a big deal about this. The Antichrist is going to say it's just a little mark. It's just a tiny little mark, and it's going to be so easy. It's going to bring our world into unity. It's going to bring our world into peace. And all you got to do is take this tiny little mark in your forehead or your hand, and it's just going to make things so easy. You're going to be able to buy and sell with it, and we'll talk about this just here in a minute. Probably a lot of other things are going to be equated with this mark as well. But it's going to be so simple. We're not asking a lot of things. It's just a quick little mark, and then you're good for the rest of your life, and you can be part of this world united empire, and everything's going to be so great and everything's so wonderful. It's just a little mark. And then he's going to be able to play this, and he's going to be able to put people against the true believers in Christ. He's going to say, you see how much trouble they're making. It's just this one little thing, and they refuse to do this, and they're against peace, and they just want to be rebels, and they want to do all this. And so you can see how he's going to be able to play this up for those who just will willingly take this. Now, we don't know what the exact method employed to get this mark will be. We don't know what that is. There has been, there's a lot of things in the book of Revelation that people discuss wildly. We've talked about the two witnesses. Who are they? We've talked about, who the Antichrist might be. But this is another thing that people in the book of Revelation, and probably more so than anything else in the book of Revelation, people talk about what is the mark? What is it going to be? And so again, we don't know. We don't know what the exact method of this mark will be. For years, while I was growing up, it was undoubtedly a tattoo. Right? For years, that's what people said. It's going to be a tattoo. And then that kind of became more specific. It's not just a tattoo. At first it was if someone's going to have a 666 tattooed on their hand or their forehead. And then it moved to, well, no, it's not going to be a 666. It's going to be a barcode. People are going to get barcodes tattooed. And then it was, well, barcodes are equated with credit cards. So credit cards are a sign of the mark of the beast. And now it seems like the prevailing theory is some sort of a microchip. It's going to be a microchip. And we understand that these are becoming very popular. In fact, if you have adopted a pet from an animal shelter, that pet is microchipped. You don't even get a choice in the matter. It is microchipped. And it is becoming a lot more common in people now to get microchipped. In fact, in Sweden, there are thousands of people who have willingly chosen to be microchipped. It is coming to the United States. There are many businesses. They haven't forced it upon people yet, but there are many businesses who have given their employees the ability to be microchipped. And a lot of people have taken up on that. And you got to understand why. It becomes very simple because on this microchip is basically all of your information. And they can sell it now that, all of your health information is on there. If something were to happen to you, the EMS can just come up and they scan this little microchip and they've got all your medical records. All your banking information is on there. In Sweden, like I said, it's becoming very popular, especially with the coronavirus, because they don't have to actually physically touch anything when they buy. They just wave their hand over a sensor, they pay, and they're good. So, no infection. And so you can understand why, again, it's very easy to see where he's going to say, if you don't have this mark, and again, I'm not saying it's microchipping. I'm just saying that's kind of what people are thinking it is today. But you can understand how easy it's going to be for him to say, if you don't get this mark, you don't buy or you don't sell. If you go back 50, 60 years, people could say, well, I'm just going to store some cash and I'll be fine. You can't do that anymore. We are virtually a cashless society already. All right? And so whenever this comes in the future, you can understand how easy it's going to be for them to say no buying, no selling without this mark. It's very rare that we do anything with cash. It's very rare that we do anything with cash. And we've already seen places, different shops and things that we've been in who have moved so far as to say that they no longer accept cash. They won't even take it anymore. Now that's rare, but that's going to be more common. And so for all practical purposes, we're there already. And so this is making its way around the world. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm just saying that that's kind of the theory of the day. So whatever form it takes, and we don't know, but whatever form it takes, it will likely be presented as the logical thing to bring the world together in peace and harmony. You see how easy it is. We just get this simple little mark, and it's going to help you, and if it helps you, it helps the community. If it helps the community, it helps the global world. And it's just going to be easy and wonderful. Everybody's going to get this mark. We're all going to live in peace, and it's going to be amazing. And so to resist, then, is not only an affront against the worship, but everybody's going to look at you like you're the crazy one. Man, why wouldn't you want to get this thing? Now, as I said, most people are going to take this. Most people are going to take this mark. Let me give you, and I don't think this is exhaustive, but let me give you 3 reasons why most people are going to take this thing. Number 1, some are going to take it because they are sure that this man is God, and they are sure that he is going to make the world a better place. This is the man who died and was resurrected before our eyes. If he wants me to take this mark, I don't care what it is. I will do whatever this man says because he's God. Right? There's going to be a lot of people in that camp. Some people are going to take it for they simply just want to get along in the world, and if it takes getting this mark to do it, then that's fine. Whatever. I don't care what it is. I just want to live a peaceable life, and if it means taking this mark, that's fine. Give me the mark. I'm just going to go along to get along. Some people are going to take it because they're absolutely scared of the consequences for not taking it. Well, I don't want to die, so sign me up. Where's the nearest marking place, right? I'll do this. And so, and again, I'm sure that there are other reasons as well. But most people are going to get involved with this. Most people are going to do this. Now, I don't want to talk about this much. We've talked about it already. But this mark, as we see there in verse 17, this mark is going to hold total economic power. Total economic power. As without it, you cannot buy or sell. And as I said, we're already set up for that. There is literally nothing that has to take place for us to move into a kind of society that has the power to do that. Nothing. We're already set up for debit cards, credit cards, and again, some people have already got this microchip that has other banking information in it. We're set up. We're there. You know, there's so many places where you don't have to get out your credit card. You can get your phone and wave it in front of the thing, and you're good. You've got all your information on your phone. We are there. It is not, it's just like a little tiny step for them to ramp this up globally, but there's not much that has to be done for us to have the kind of ability to have total economic power. You don't buy, you don't sell unless you have this particular mark. Now, verse 17 shows us, interestingly, that there's a little bit of variety. There's a little bit of variety in the mark. Look at the end of verse 17. Save that he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So interesting, there's a little bit of a variety on what this mark will be, at least the physical manifestation of it. And so it will be either the name of the beast or it will be the number of his name. And, of course, that brings us to the infamous 666. Now, this number has led to so much bewilderment and consternation through the centuries, particularly with Christians. But, and I want to emphasize this, there is nothing in the text that should lead you to hold this number with any sort of superstition. There's nothing in this text that presents to us that says that that is an evil number, that you need to stay away from it, and that if I've seen people that just get absolutely crazy with it. They won't count. If you're counting, they'll skip this number. If they have anything in their house that has that number in it, you got to get rid of it. No, I'm not having that evil in my house. They're taking this text and they're running with it, and they're making it into something it ought not to be. That's not what this text is saying. That is simply a number. There is no evil associated with that number beyond that it's going to represent or be a clue to people who are alive at this time as to who the Antichrist is. And so, again, we don't need to be superstitious with this number. We don't have to live that kind of a way. And so what this number is, this number is given as an alternate to the name of the beast. Now, let me read this first. Verse 18, let me read verse 13. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And so John Walver, let me quote him, and then I'll have some more to say here. The number 6 in Scripture is the number of mankind, symbolic of how humanity is constantly falling short of God's perfection, which in Scripture is represented by the number 7. He goes on to say, and this is not on the screen, but he goes on to say, man was to work 6 days and rest the 7th. The image of Nebuchadnezzar was 60 cubits high and 6 cubits broad. And I would add to that, man was created on the sixth day. Right? 6 has always been the number of man. And then he goes on to say here, whatever may be the deeper meaning of the number, it implies that this title referring to the first beast, Satan's masterpiece, limits him to man's level, which is far short of the deity of Christ. And I think that's the point here. He falls short. He falls short. Now, somehow, some way, the name of the individual relates to this particular number. We're not told how. We're only told that it does. And this is important because people have taken this particular verse and they have run with it. And they have made all kinds of people out to be the Antichrist because they say, I've cracked the code. This man is equated with 666 and we've got it, it's him. This is mostly done with Nero. I won't spend a lot of time here because we've talked about this in the past. And so the way that they do this is they equate a number to a particular letter, either in Greek or in Hebrew or the Roman alphabet, whatever alphabet you want to use. They equate a number to a letter, and then they simply take the letter of the name and they add up the numerical value. And so they've done this with Nero, but in order to get Nero's name to add up to 666, you have to say it in a way that is not particularly said, and then you have to convert it from Greek to, or from Roman to Greek, and then you have to take the Greek numerical value. And so they jump through all of these hoops to make Nero's name equate 666. They've done the same thing with Hitler. And I think I understand how to do this. If the letter A in the English alphabet is 101, the letter B is 102, C 103, and so on and so forth until you get to Z. If you do that, and you take the letters of Hitler and you add them together, it equals 666. But who in their right mind looks at that verse and say, well, clearly, we have to use the English alphabet, and clearly A is 101 and so forth. You'd have to understand the exact language that the word is being spoken in, understand the exact way in which the number equates to the letter, to be able to add it up that way. I don't believe, that's what most people throughout the centuries believe John was talking about here. I don't believe that's what John is saying. I don't believe that John is saying there's going to come a man and you're going to be able to add up the numerical value of his name and it's going to add up to 666. I don't think that's what he's talking about. Because furthermore, what language? In what language would we need to do this in? Because he doesn't say. If he would have said, you take his name in Greek and it equals 666, then I would say that's probably what he's talking about. But that's not what he says. And so people have taken this and they've run with it. And so through this, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but people have said that Nero, but it has also been done with Pope, with the Pope. And what I think about it's interesting about this, they do it with the Pope and they also do it with Martin Luther. And so I guess it depends on which part of the Reformation you were on. You say, no, it's the Pope, and then the Catholics will say, well, no, it was Martin Luther, clearly. And so they've done it with the Pope, they've done it with Martin Luther, they've done it with Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. As I said earlier, basically any man who's ever held any kind of world power position, they have found a way to add his name up to be 666, and they say, clearly I found it, I've cracked the code, this man is the Antichrist. However, we're missing the point. When you do that, you're missing the point. The point of verse 18 is this: those who are alive when this particular system is being implemented, if they are using wisdom, if they think about this, they will be able to understand and equate this man with that number in some way. We're not told how. We are not told how. We are just told that it will happen. And so when we try to do that, we're missing the point. So let me just end with this. Because as I said earlier, this particular number has caused a lot of people a lot of stress, consternation throughout the years. I've dealt with this. I've dealt with people who have, I'll give you one particular example. I had somebody call me once fearfully, and I mean fearfully, on the verge of tears, call me once because they did something when they were a lot younger, and they did it at a time that they were not thinking clearly, and they got something tattooed on their body that they should never have gotten tattooed on their body. But they called me fearfully because they said, have I taken the mark of the beast? And they were genuine. They were seriously afraid that they had taken the mark of the beast and would therefore be rejected by God and had condemned themselves to hell. And people live this way. And people fear this. Again, as I said, I remember people getting fearful when credit cards came out. I remember people being fearful about barcodes. I've heard these particular arguments being made. And today, I've heard this. I've heard people say this. I've read it in the news, and people are worried that they're going to accidentally take it with some new technology. And right now, what they're saying is Bill Gates is going to slip it into some coronavirus vaccine. And I'm going to take the mark of the beast, and I'm not even going to know it. Well, that is nothing like what we read in Scripture. That cannot be the case. And so let me just give you a little bit of comfort before we end tonight. Unless, here's the situation. Unless the Antichrist is present, unless the false prophet is demanding worship of the image of the beast, and unless this particular mark is required to buy and sell, it is not the mark of the beast. I don't care what you have done. I don't care what fear you may have. If those three things are not happening, you have not and are not taking the mark of the beast. Now, let me say all that to say this. I'm not saying that those other things are, I'm not saying that Bill Gates isn't going to slip something in that vaccine. I don't think he is, but I'm just saying that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if that were to happen, you have not taken the mark of the beast. We don't have to live in that kind of a fear. It will be obvious at that point, and again, that's what verse 18 is about. It will be obvious to the people alive when this is taking place. If I do this, especially if you are a believer in Christ, if I do this, it's over. They will be given the ability, and I believe the courage, to withstand the temptation to take it. And many will be beheaded for their unwillingness to participate in his particular system. And so, again, we don't have to live in that kind of a fear. This is the situation that must take place, that must be present if the mark of the beast is what is happening at that time. So unless this has happened, and I'll just give you a news flash, it hasn't, and it's not right now, you're not taking the mark of the beast, and you haven't taken the mark of the beast. So we don't have to live, again, we don't have to live in fear of that number. We don't have to live in fear of taking it without even realizing it or without even knowing it.